Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about mentorship programs to help make our judiciary more diverse. And this is something that you have heard me speak about. I've written about this, and I'll give you a little background on where this idea came from. In my career, I have met judges who have told me that they supported certain candidates for selection to the judiciary because they were their proteges. And, the first time I ever heard that, I thought that was remarkable. I didn't realize that judges took lawyers under their wing and, sort of shepherd them through the process and gave them the knowledge and the insights to make them more viable for selection. I don't see anything wrong with that, by the way. I think that's great. I'm a advocate for mentorship. It's something that I am very supportive of for high school students and college students and law students and young lawyers. It's something that I value in part because I didn't have access to those types of opportunities, but it's something that now that I am the one in privileged positions, I want to turn back around and help other people up. I don't feel that there's anything good or valuable about other people struggling in the same way that I did. Well, I think that struggle and hardship are very important in building strength of character. I think that there's plenty of areas where each of us can, encounter hardships and struggles without necessarily having to, go through struggles that can be avoided. And the, ability to have a mentor in, the judicial selection process is something that I think every qualified aspirant, every lawyer who has some, basic level of, qualifications, the number of years of experience, a good, clean professional record, and so on and so forth, who thinks that they would like to serve on the bench should have the opportunity to be mentored in the same way that somebody who, happens to have a family member who's in the judiciary can have, or somebody who, by virtue of their socioeconomic background, has in their network one or more judges. And so they're able to access those individuals for that one on one guidance. I think that everybody who aspires to, you know, go to the bench, if they meet certain qualifications, should be given the opportunity to be paired up with a judge in their jurisdiction who can guide them and teach them to get to a level where they become a more viable candidate for selection to the judiciary in that region. Now, I came up with this idea because I've seen other people say that they were mentored, or I've seen judges say that they mentored so and so, and I thought, well, I never had that opportunity. And I know that there are a lot of other lawyers younger than me and even older than me who have not had that opportunity and still don't have that opportunity. And that's probably one of the reasons why our judiciary still doesn't properly reflect the diversity of the communities in which it resides and works. And if we're going to address that lack of diversity issue, one way to do that is to create a mentoring program that will help people become better, more viable candidates for selection. And one of the reasons why I believe a mentorship program will be helpful is because I know, again, from my conversations with, my peers and people that I mentor, and even from my own experience, that a lot of times qualified lawyers don't think that they're qualified. Qualified lawyers think that they're not good enough yet to be viable candidates for the judiciary. People who have the requisite skills to be in that judicial selection pipeline self-select out because they don't think they're ready, or because they think that the system is slanted unfairly against them. And the only way to address that issue, one of the ways, not the only, one of the ways to address that issue is to provide one-on-one mentoring so that they can understand what it is that makes them qualified to overcome that imposter syndrome. And number two, in those areas where they still do have deficiencies that make them less qualified or not as viable, to identify those and then to develop strategies and then implement plans to ameliorate those deficiencies, to eliminate those deficiencies. And those are things that a mentor can help with. But like I said, a lot of people don't have access to that. A lot of people, especially in underrepresented communities, don't have access to mentors. And so, just by default, what happens is those people who come from families of lawyers, families of judges, from socioeconomic backgrounds where there are many lawyers and judges in their friendship networks, those are the people who get access to the mentorship more often than those people who come from families where they are first generation lawyers, where they come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, where lawyers were not the norm, where they are the only lawyer in their network, in their friends group. The idea is to address that problem by creating a system of mentorship here in the state of Illinois. So when I thought about that, I started researching it. I thought it was a good idea, and surely other people have thought of this already. And not to my surprise, I found that, in fact, the idea of creating a mentorship program for aspiring attorneys who want to become judges is not only not new, but it has been proposed as a solution to address the problem of underrepresented communities not being in the pipeline for judicial selection for decades. In fact, the research that I did found that as early as 1992, they were talking about the lack of diversity in the judiciary, and that building mentorship programs that would level the playing field would be one of the ways that they could address the lack of diversity in the judiciary by improving the pipeline of qualified minority candidates for the selection process. And so I saw some of those writings, some of that research, and I found that as late as far back as 1997, the National Association of State Courts had commissioned a research project that actually put together a 161-page guidebook on how to develop a mentorship program for judicial aspirants. And that was published back in 1997. Now, I could not find that publication on the internet. I couldn't find a PDF. I couldn't find it on Amazon. I finally found it on an obscure website called Internet Archives, and I had to screenshot a bunch of the pages, and I took some time to read over it. And I'm going to use this talk to summarize what that document suggested would be a template for building a mentorship program for judicial aspirants. So the number one thing that they recommended as a result of their research was that you need data. And for those of you who follow my writing and my speaking, I talk about measure what you treasure, and about the importance of step one being collecting data on the demographics of our courts. Now, this proposal that was developed back in 1997 went even further. They said, number one, you definitely need to do research and collect data on the demographic makeup of your courts, not just in total, but broken down on levels and circuits. And then you want to take a look at the demographics of the communities that are served by that level of court. And then you go even further and you actually look at the demographics of the people who most frequently use those courts. And you collect all of that data in order to assess whether or not that particular level of court is diverse or not. And then you take that information about the diversity of the court or the lack thereof, and you then start to disseminate that information to basically sell to the community, to the public, the importance of a diverse judiciary and show the evidence where the evidence suggests that there is a lack of diversity in the judiciary. And one of the things that this guide talked about is that you need to take that data and you need to share it with the judiciary, you need to share it with the bar, but you also need to take that information and you need to share it with the general public. And again, I really felt validated by this document that was written in 1997 that I just come across, because this is something that I talked about in my most recent writing, that it's not enough that the conversation about judicial diversity or the lack thereof is taking place in the legal circles. This conversation needs to take place in the broader general public. And that is because at the end of the day, judicial integrity and trust in the judicial system comes from the people it serves. If the general public does not trust the judicial system, then we have a very big problem. And when the judicial system doesn't reflect the community, that is one of the sources of illegitimacy. So we need to take that information to the general public. And so in this guide, they suggested that we need to reach out to civic organizations, community organizations, faith-based organizations, those places where they are organizing for civic good and for the common good, and to explain to them in those instances where there is a lack of diversity that this is a problem and this is what the civic community can and should do in partnership with the judiciary and the legal community and others to start to address that issue. So you take that data, you identify where the shortcomings are, and you make sure it's as comprehensive as possible. And then you take that to all the different stakeholders, that is the judiciary, that is the legal community, and that is to the general public as well. You take it to them and you convince them that this is an issue that needs to be addressed in a comprehensive, all hands on deck approach. And then you bring those stakeholders together to talk about how the judicial selection processes in our state take place. Because honestly, most people don't understand the various ways that judges are selected to sit in the seats that they sit in. We have the associate judge positions, we have the circuit court judge positions, we have elections for circuit court judges, we have retention elections for circuit court judges, and then we have the Supreme Court appointments to circuit court judges when there are vacancies. All of this is very complicated to the layperson. It's actually very complicated even to many lawyers. Many lawyers, don't necessarily understand the nuances of how this all works. So the recommendation is to collect this data, to take it to the stakeholders, and then to bring those stakeholders who are ready to buy into the importance of a diverse judiciary and the value that a mentorship program could play in improving the diversity of the judiciary. And explaining how all of that works in some type of conference or conferences so that people are all operating with the same set of facts, so that the people who are in that particular jurisdiction are all working from the same set of data, so that all those people in that jurisdiction have the same evidence of what the problem is and have all the information on what role a mentorship program can play in either ameliorating or even eliminating the problem of a lack of diversity in the judiciary. And then once you get the buy-in, you can move to the next phase, which is to actually develop a mentorship program. And in order to do that, you need people who are stakeholders in the process to be part of an advisory team. So you need the presiding judge of that jurisdiction. Perhaps you need, justice from the Supreme Court to oversee the process and to give it the administrative court's imprimatur. Then you need the Bar Association, and not just the regional bar association or the state bar association, but also one or more of the affinity bar associations whose representative communities are part of the jurisdiction where this mentorship program is being contemplated. And then, of course, you need the stakeholders, which are the people who live in that community. So you look to the civic and the faith-based community organizations and you draw from them as well. And finally, you want to try to loop in academia. You want to loop in ideally a law school, but if not a law school, then perhaps a sociology professor who can help with developing the tools to collect data and to analyze data once the programs are being put together and then are implemented. And then this group is going to come together and define certain important aspects of the mentorship program. Number one will be, what are the outcomes that this mentorship program is trying to achieve? It's important for the team to identify, what will a successful mentorship program accomplish? What are the tangible outcomes from the program in total and the one-on-one mentor-mentee relationships that take place? What are the metrics that we can measure to see if there is a good mentor-mentee relationship and if it's successful or not? Next, you want this group to then identify, what are the characteristics of a good mentor? You want this group to develop a rubric for who is eligible to participate in this mentorship program. Is there a minimum number of years of experience? Is there certain requirements in terms of trial experience? Whatever those requirements are, that the group of lawyers, judges, and community members can agree are relevant factors in somebody being a viable candidate for judicial selection, can go into the application for who is eligible to participate in the mentorship program. And then they can also develop the types of surveys, entry and exit, to be given to the mentors, to the mentees, to the judiciary, to evaluate how effective the program is. So that's at that next level where you put that together, where you put the rules, the requirements, and the objectives. And then you put the structure together. You decide, is this mentorship program going to be a 2-month mentorship? Is it going to be a 1-year mentorship? Is it going to be an indefinite mentorship? Is it going to be some longer term but finite mentorship? You put that information together. And then once you have the structure of the program, you need to identify the resources you need to implement it. So who is going to coordinate the mentorship program? Is it going to be the bar associations? Is it going to be the judiciary? Is it going to be the university or law school that is partnering? There's going to be some combination thereof. So you need to then develop out the logistical structure of the program itself. And then you execute, and you execute the program, and then you measure it, and then you come back and you evaluate what was done well, what wasn't done well, because ultimately the success of a mentoring program is going to be an iterative process. The first version isn't necessarily going to achieve all the objectives that we wanted to achieve. And if it doesn't, that doesn't mean that it's a failure. It means that we need to look and see where the shortcomings were. And in an iterative process, make the necessary changes and then implement it for the next round and see what improvements are made, if any, and then continue that process until we get to a point where those objectives that were laid out at the beginning of the program development are beginning to be met consistently, as many as possible. And once you decide that you've reached a critical mass of success in terms of objectives, then you might say, all right, now we have a program that can be rolled out in other jurisdictions as well. Now, that's like a very broad overview of how a judicial mentorship program can work. Not only did I look at that guidance from 1997, but I also looked to see, are there actually any judicial mentorship programs that are operating in the United States right now that we can look to? Because why reinvent the wheel if we don't need to? And I found that California actually has a relatively new 5 or 6 year old judicial mentorship program that is underway right now. And through a whole bunch of cold calls and cold emails, I was actually able to get in touch with individuals in Governor Newsom's administration, who then put me in touch with jurists in California who were either instrumental in putting California's judicial mentorship program together and or who are integral in administering a local mentorship program. And I had the opportunity to get on the phone and interview those jurists who built the program, some of the jurists who are running the local programs. And then I also had the opportunity to serendipitously talk to a friend's brother who was recently appointed to the bench in California and who had gone through this early cohort of the mentorship program. So I've had a chance to talk to people who have actually done this work in California and people who have gone through this program in California. And much to, our good fortune here in Illinois, the people that I talk to in California are very eager to help us build this work here in Illinois through guidance and advice. And they were very generous in sharing their implementing documents and their planning documents and their structure documents with me so that I can see what that program actually looks like on the ground. And one of the interesting things that one of the jurists told me when talking to me about her experience putting this program together, she said, you know, part of the mentorship program is once it's implemented, you've got to take the information and put it on a roadshow. You've got to take it out to the different bar associations and community organizations and civic groups and explain what it is, why it's there, what problem it's trying to solve. And she noted that, as important as the underlying mentorships that come from this program are, more important and more valuable, in her opinion, is the work of getting the word out about the process by through the various presentations that they do year round, because that process of explaining the mentorship program, the whys and the hows, has allowed more people to become aware of, number one, the issue of judicial diversity and why it's important and where it's lacking, and also the importance of understanding the process of judicial appointments overall. So I think that we can tap into the information and insights and experience that California has to offer in building the program here in Illinois. So, in closing, I would ask anybody who's listening to reach out to me if you are a part of the legal community here in Illinois who has thought about building a mentorship program that levels the playing field, that allows all viable aspirants to the bench to have access to a judicial mentor and not leave it just to those who have the privilege of having personal relationships with judges. And if you are actually doing this work and it's already taking place in Illinois, I would love to connect with you because, again, if you're already doing it here in Illinois and I just don't know about it, then there's a good chance that other people don't know about it either. And, you know, I would love to amplify the work that you're doing. And depending on what jurisdiction you're doing this work in, I would love to bring that work into other jurisdictions as well. So if you're interested in this work, if you agree with me that building a judicial mentorship program that puts judges and judicial aspirants together so that we can improve the pipeline of underrepresented lawyers into the judicial selection pipeline to improve the diversity of the judiciary, then reach out to me. In closing, I do want to make one final point. This judicial mentorship program that I envision is not limited to people who come from quote unquote underrepresented communities. I think it's important to remember that it's not just the color of your skin, your ethnic background, your national origin, gender identity, gender orientation, or religion, or any other immutable characteristic that makes you underrepresented. I think that where you come from, your socioeconomic background, those are all limiting factors as well that limit people from being able to access judicial mentors. This judicial mentorship program is meant for anybody who aspires to become a judge and would like to be mentored by a judge, regardless of whether or not you fit into some underrepresented category or not. The goal is that if we're able to put a mentorship program together, we will make a more diverse and robust pipeline of judicial candidates who are operating on a more level playing field. So that is my presentation on judicial mentorship programs. In future programs, I'm going to talk about the importance of creating a judicial college, not for judges, but for lawyers who aspire to soon be appointed to the bench. Because as I've talked about this in the past, it makes little sense that you have to go to law school to be a lawyer. And even when you become a lawyer, if you want to become a guardian ad litem, you need to take a 40-hour training program. If you want to become a mediator or an arbitrator, you have to take a week-long full-time program or longer. But to become a judge, you don't get to judicial college until after you've been appointed or elected. It makes more sense if we also provide an opportunity for a judicial college that exposes judicial aspirants to what it takes to sit on the bench, what are the requirements, what are the skills, what are the things that they need to know before they put their applications in. And keep in mind that if you do something like that, then you can actually generate some quantifiable metrics in the judicial selection process that don't currently exist today. When people go through a particular program, how they do, how well they participated could potentially be part of the evaluative process in selecting who is going to be the best qualified to sit on the bench. We don't have that right now. Right now, a lot of the decision-making process is very subjective. And the more objective we can make it, the better off we're going to be. Last point. On January 30th, 2026, I'm going to be moderating a continuing legal education seminar sponsored by the Illinois State Bar Association. It will be via Zoom online, and it is about the unconscious biases in the judicial selection processes in Illinois. It's a great panel of current and retired judges and justices. And one of the unique things about this Illinois State Bar Association CLE that I am going to be moderating is that even though we're online, we're going to have a component that has a breakout session where each of the panelists will lead a group discussion of people who are participating in the CLE near the second half of the program, where they can talk about possible solutions to address the unconscious biases in the judicial selection process, and then come back and share that with the bigger group. That's something that you don't often get when you do online CLEs, continuing legal education seminars. This one is going to have that component because it's really important that we get feedback. Ideally, this is a program for anybody who aspires to become a judge, and particularly for those individuals who have either gone through the process and were not successful, or people who have chosen not to put themselves through the process because they perceive that there are biases that will work against them. We want to get all those people in the room together so that we can have a more fulsome conversation about these issues with sitting and retired judges and justices who have gone through these processes and will speak candidly about their perspective on this issue. So that's the Illinois State Bar Association. The CLE, Continuing Legal Education Seminar, will be on January 30th, 2026 online. You can go to the isba.org website and register for that CLE. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please reach out to me if this is the kind of work that you are interested in doing. I'm looking for people to collaborate with me on this work, and look forward to hearing from you.